Hello ladies, I'm Lydia from Home Living blog, and I am making these videos for my blog. That's where I put them, and if you would like to leave a comment, you can go over there and leave a comment. At this point, I'm not wanting to monitor any more social media than I have to, so I won't be opening comments for a while. So today, I just would like to say that I'm so happy that you're coming back to visit me and visit my blog, and I will provide a link, as I said before. I'm making these videos specifically for my blog, so that's where I'd like you to go and participate with others and see what we're all about, read some of the other things that are there. Some of you have asked me about making a contribution. The contribution from PayPal, the PayPal button is on the left of my blog if you want to leave $1 or $2. And by the way, your contributions are such a tremendous help to me, as you have, those of you who have followed my blog over the years have seen the sewing and what I do with the extra supplies. And also want to mention that I don't edit on my videos, possibly because if you were sitting across the table from me, I would not be able to edit myself, so you'll have to overlook some of the blunders for now. I would suggest that you use this video as a background noise for doing your housework. Sometimes it's nice to listen to something. Have you ever found a story on LibriVox or something like that? You know, when my children were home, they would sit on a stool and read to me while I did something that they couldn't do, or that I had to do, that would be a kind of a repetitive chore, of which there are many in the home. So that's what this video is for. You can listen on a small device, carry it around with you, set it up where you are, folding clothes, washing dishes, sorting through books, toys, etc. And this will get you through, I predict, cleaning a room, loading the dishwasher, sweeping and putting away laundry, or ironing a shirt or two. This is, in my opinion, a wonderful time in the world to be alive, and yet it has changed how we do things. No longer is it possible to get a large group of ladies in the home for a class or for any refreshment or just for fellowship, for reinforcement and encouragement as homemakers. Everyone is extremely busy, extremely isolated, and especially those of us who live in the country, because the distances are so great and we need to do our work. But this platform, doing videos, is available and very useful, and can be very exciting because you can replay the conversation. The purpose of this video today is to support homemakers who many times find themselves in need of some encouragement, maybe a little isolated or without reinforcement or approval, and maybe even enduring intimidation and pressure. There may be jealousy and skepticism for taking up their responsibilities at home full time. And I hope to discuss this more. Do you know, if you were not home and you were working regularly outside of the home, there probably wouldn't be any question about it. But sometimes people can ask some things that are rather astonishing when you decide that you're going to stay home. So I hope to discuss each of these negative things in future videos and show how you can use them to motivate you to move forward instead of letting them debilitate you. I hope to cover several things here, including being motivated, being creative, being rested, being careful not to hate yourself for failures, to meet your own quotas or deadlines or your own dreams or goals. There will always be those others who expect an extremely high code of living and success from you in the home. They can be awful critics too. It isn't going against the tide of culture to go to work away from home every day, because people see it all the time and they're used to it. But working at home for yourself you can get some pretty funny remarks. But when you decide to be a homemaker full time, you really get ignorant questions and sometimes accusations. So be careful about taking this in too deeply. People that project hate are good about making you hate yourself. So you must reject the criticism and use it as a trigger to outwit them and rise above it. Now I want to cover rest. It's so important that you not be on your feet all the time and that you do as many things as you can in the home in the way of work. In a seated position and resting your feet if you possibly can. It's more mobile if you can stand up, but all day long on your feet is not good. And sometimes we treat ourselves worse at home than anybody at work would have treated us. And we forget we need to rest at a certain amount of time. That's why I promote tea time, because it is just so refreshing and relaxing and rejuvenating to sit down and have some time alone with a hot cup of tea of your choice and think about what you're doing, get motivated again. Now be careful about taking in criticism too deeply. So that's another thing. And use it as a motivation. So be motivated, be creative, be rested, and don't spend any time hating yourself for failure. Now I am talking as a support for women who are at home creating a home for themselves and perhaps for their families if they have a family. I know there are a lot of women who are now widows or who are not yet married that will be home for one reason or another. And I'll have to tell you that growing up in the 1950s, I observed that homemaking was a matter of being self-employed and learning how to be motivated by love and duty, if you will. If any of you know about self-employment, it's not a group approval job, and neither is homemaking. Most of what you do will be in your home without a group, possibly alone, other than your own family. So I'm simply delivering ideas to you, you who are at home, to overcome the problem of discouragement. If you are dependent on the approval of others, you'll have a tough time of reaching your goals. But if you learn to take all your worries and your cares to God at the start of every day and throughout the day when you reach a snag or when you feel that you need to communicate, you'll become stronger and more confident, and soon you will be shrugging off anything that's discouraging. That being said, being home is a great thing. From the beginning of time, women found tremendous responsibility in the home, in home life, in homemaking, and they knew they must guard and guide their home. And their family was dependent on them to do this. And as the Bible teaches in 1 Timothy 5:14, Titus 2, and inferred in other passages, we want to follow that women be the guide and the guard of the home, that they learn to love their children, love their husbands, and be keepers at home. But today, the challenges to the full-time homemaker are great. It isn't part of the culture anymore. The lights are out in the neighborhood where you live. When you have to give an answer to someone about what do you do, it's discouraging to look at their reaction and the look on their faces. So it isn't easy, and the world isn't cooperating with you. The world's not really catering to you at all. So even when you do have the approval and prayers and reinforcement of others, it can become tiring and discouraging to do a job that is going to get messed up, and you have to do it over and over, day after day. Things that will always need to be done. That's the way it is in any office. That's the way it is in any workplace. That's the way it is at home. So you can't be discouraged. So keeping the house in good condition, making it look good, that's why many homemakers of the past had something to overcome the repetitiveness of this. They had handwork they enjoyed doing, or art. I don't know if you have heard of Alexis de Tocqueville. I know in homeschooling, Alexis de Tocqueville is one of the most familiar authors that children like to read about. He was a Frenchman who came to America in the 1800s, and he wrote a book called America Revisited. And he observed that even in the most roughly hewn cabins in the wilderness, where he was treated as a guest in America, women labored in the home to provide a respite for their families. And he observed how hard they worked, and how they created meals from their garden, and yet they spent, he was astonished in one part of a chapter at how they might spend an evening embroidering some fine piece of tapestry that is not necessary nor useful to their way of life. And he thought that this was something of just like royalty. He was astonished with it. And I remember my great-grandmother, and they all had needlework. They all had things they embroidered that were very pretty, but they weren't of any use to anyone. Do you know something? This is like my sewing. It's something that will last a while. It's not like a meal that's gone. You could, spend a lot of time on a meal and it's gone. You wash all the dishes and the next day they're back again. But when you do something like this, such as sewing or handwork of some kind, or even painting, it's something that's still going to be there. It's something of lasting value that will not get messed up. And so such works live on after these people in the museums of the country and in other countries. Perhaps this is why the ladies in the 1950s enjoyed sewing, letter writing, composing stories, and poetry was quite prominent at the time too. Everybody wrote poems and painting. And unlike growing food and preparing meals, a handmade garment or a quilt could be used for a long, long time and passed on to others in the family and not have to be done over and over. And housework is the same thing over and over, and you could get awfully discouraged if there wasn't something else that had lasting value. These quiet activities are ways to overcome discouragement and add to your time of rest. Now, this responsibility of guiding and guarding the home has great value. Helping others in the family in their own endeavors and their own destiny in life is the greatest caregiving in the world. And being the guardian of that is absolutely better than being a leader of a country. And homemaking is more than keeping house. It is dispensing encouragement to others in the home, to help them in their future, and to teach and train them to do excellently. There is no political group of homemakers, really. There's no voting group. And each person is far too absorbed in their own home to participate in any kind of political activism or movement called homemaking. But look at how it changes things when one person does it. When one person decided to homeschool their children back in the 1980s, she did not know there were many other individuals doing it and thinking they were the only ones. And yet, we never really operated as a group, and we didn't have group approval. We just had our families. We just quietly went about our business of guiding our own children. You may not change the world, but you will change your own home and the way your family lives, and that's more important. And I never really got the impression from the Bible that we were commanded to change the world, because it's all about conversion and changing yourself and helping others reach that point too. So I wanted to bring that up too, because I think especially women, they grow up thinking they're going to do something great, and they don't realize there's greatness in homemaking and in loving your family. So in doing so, you can lead your own children to obey the gospel. We all want to, young girls have a tendency to want to go out and be missionaries, but you're a missionary in your own home. And each of you will keep your house differently. And that's what is amazing. We don't really operate as a group. There are no two people alike, and no two houses will be identical in the way they're taken care of and lived in. So you'll be an individual, and your responsibility and your duty is totally yours. And how you carry it out is up to you. You know, the Bible says that women should guide the home and keep house, but it doesn't tell you how to do it because it leaves it up to your own inspiration and your own creativity. So here's a technique that I often use in the home. Let's suppose that you wake up in the morning and one look at your house upon arising, you dread it so much you just want to crawl back under the covers and go back to sleep. That would probably never happen in the workplace because those places are required to keep up the housekeeping so that it can be publicly acceptable health-wise, and our homes ought to have a standard also, so that we don't wake up to this. But it often happens that way because someone has not felt well, or there has been a family upheaval of some kind, or you've been on a trip, or a baby is born, so things aren't always going to be perfect. So you wake up in the morning and you don't like what you see. It's not orderly. You don't feel good. You just want to run away to some place that's kept nicely. So this becomes a problem of renewing your mind, and to use a New Testament term. And this is how I do it. And by the way, it makes me very nervous to hear anyone say, well, Mrs. Sherman, since that's the way you do it, then it's okay that I will do it that way. You have to take into account your own likes and dislikes, your own personality, and the way you do your best. You can use my ideas and create your own methods of keeping house, but don't follow everything I do, or you may find yourself neglecting the unique needs of your own house and your own family, and inheriting some of the problems that I have. Anytime you copy somebody, you're always going to end up with some of their problems too. So be sure that you are uniquely your own creative self. However, do use good advice and do use sound principles. So one thing I do when I have one of those dreaded mornings is I think for a moment what I would actually like to wake up to. You know, get a picture in my mind of it. What would I like to wake up to? I may even sketch a picture of it in my book, in my schedule book, of the particular area of the house that's bothering me with its disorder or dullness. I may approach the job as though I am a guest. What would I like the guest to see upon entering a certain area of the house? I would take into account the following things: orderliness, cleanliness, color, arrangement, scent, sound, texture, and the way it makes me feel. Tense, relaxing, enthusiastic, happy, content. Think back to places you have visited or pictures you have seen and try to replicate whatever gave you that wonderful feeling. Before I go on to another challenge, I want to elaborate more on discouragement. I've observed that the two most discouraging things are regrets over losing opportunities in the past because of not being alert or wise, and wise enough to grab that opportunity. And I could tell you some stories about the things I've missed out on, but it would be too painful and too discouraging, and I'm trying to talk to you about overcoming discouragement. And people get discouraged about not being able to accomplish what we set out to do in the present. For instance, a homemaker especially is susceptible to this because she wakes up in the morning and by the end of the day she wants a certain amount of things done, you know, to make the family comfortable, to meet the needs of the children and her husband. And at the end of the day, there might be something that came up that prevented it. And so this can be very discouraging. So I've always said, just continue that step the next day. Just continue. It might take a few weeks to catch up, but it will be done. Also, we face the fact that as homemakers, our list of to-do items gets longer and our time seems to get shorter. And as the old hymn says, time is filled with swift transition. Do you remember that song? I believe it was called Hold to God's Unchanging Hand. If you can tell me what that song means, that would be very interesting to start commenting on. And so we wake up with excitement and high hopes of accomplishing a great deal of homemaking, maybe even be able to read to the children or write a little book or draw or some interesting hobby that you have, or do a little bit more outside of just ordinary housework, things that will last you. Maybe hopefully by the end of the day we'll have a clean house, clean clothes, meal preparation done and cleaned up, and a few extra things like sewing or errands or special cleaning or visits. And we sometimes get waylaid on one thing, and it can be very discouraging. Eventually, through experience in the home, we learn to use our time wisely and do things more efficiently. I can remember when I first began with only a husband and no children, how I could actually clean and order the house in one day from one end to the other. I knew where everything was. The drawers were cleaned. If I had to get up in the night with no light, I could find something. Those days are long gone. And the beds were made, and the laundry was clean, and we wake up the next day to clothes folded and put away and no work to do, and to be able to have the day to maybe go do the shopping. The refrigerator was clean, and there was a clean new slate to start whatever I wanted. And as the family got bigger and responsibilities got more enormous, and there was extended family and there were other responsibilities, I was not able to do this every day. And it can add up to discouragement if you don't realize this is the way life goes. Eventually, I had to accept that some things would not be done even that frequently. The important thing is to keep the goal fresh in your mind of what you'd like to accomplish, and to be happy and content in pursuing your dreams of having a happy family and a pleasant dwelling place. And you can enlist the help of those in your family. You don't have to do it all yourself. And children love to tag along with someone who is helping them learn to be neat and tidy and to make the home function. So I'm going to continue in the next video that I do with this subject of support for homemakers. I'll support you with these lectures, and you can support me with your comments, and that will keep my interest up. I'd like to also say that having grown up in the 1950s and having had some contact with my Victorian great-grandmother born in the 1800s, these are wonderful times today to be a homemaker. There's so much to be thankful for that our forebears invented to make life at home easier. In fact, if you've ever seen a list of inventions during the Victorian era, a great portion of them were labor-saving devices to make life at home easier. Thanks for watching, and please click the link below. Leave a comment on my blog, and God bless all of you who have encouraged me all these years in the ups and downs of working on the internet. People have expressed the longing to speak to other homemakers over the fence while they hang out the wash, but I will tell you that was not always the case in those days, since many of us were isolated on our own homesteads, and I will try to address the problem of isolation in a future video. Because we work alone and because we work at home, it's impossible to socialize so much, and so there are other ways of contacting others and encouraging yourself. So to summarize, the life as a homemaker is a type of greatness. It's self-employment, and it's all important. It is a leading role and a supporting role at the same time. The 2 points of this lesson are two of the points of this lesson are: discouragement is something you will face, but you can turn it around. And as I have shown you by answering the question, if you could have it the way you wanted it, what would it be like? and then do whatever you can to improve the situation. To complain, to blame, to fall into depression, and to punish is not very constructive. In fact, complaining does lead to discouragement and depression. So don't feed yourself that kind of thing. You can work around discouragement. And when you've been criticized, use it as a platform for going beyond your goal and doing your best or better. So I'll leave you with this old saying. In fact, I think it was once seen on embroidery on a towel or some kind of tapestry. It's also a very good child's handwriting lesson. Good, better, best. Never let it rest till your good is better and your better best. I'm sure we have heard Philippians 4:8 so many times that it goes in one ear and out the other. But it never hurts to remind yourself to think on things that are lovely, and especially when you've been the recipient of discouraging words. Just as you should leave others encouraged, always build other people up, you also have to keep yourself encouraged so that you may mind your home. Begin each day with serious prayer to God through Christ, and not just by praying spur of the moment prayers at the last minute when you're feeling anxious, but do some serious deep praying when the discouragement comes. You will notice that though the culture around you is not changed and not supportive, you are changed and living above it all. Since I always get a request for the name of, this is kind of off the subject, but after my videos, somebody always writes to me and asks for the name of the lip gloss and the clothes I'm wearing. So I'll put the details on my blog. Today, my skincare products and my makeup, well, I'll list it all below. You'll probably be surprised what some of it is. And it's available to you too. My dress, of course, is sewn by me. I'll put the pattern, number, and the fabric, where I got the fabric, on there. And since I've been publishing on the internet, I have made so many good friends, and I want you to be sure and look at the blog roll where some of my friends are, and go and visit them also. So thanks for watching, and God bless you, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Bye.